Okay. Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to let some people trickle in and get their audio set up. And in the meantime, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping and introduce our speaker for today. Thank you all for joining. Welcome. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling in from. It's always interesting to see who attends across the country and across the globe. But hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Higginbotham, Communications and Digital Specialist for the Institute for Public Relations. Thanks for joining us today for this IPR webinar with Brooke Gracey on how to use generative AI, such as ChatGPT, to build virtual events, such as webinars. Before I begin, I have a few reminders for you. First, we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A box. We're going to allot time at the end to answer a few audience questions. And you're welcome to use the chat box at any time to leave comments, share resources, etc. But please note that an IPR staff member will be moderating questions throughout the Q&A only. If you have any logistical questions or tech difficulties today, just feel free to message myself or any IPR staff member in the Zoom chat. And then this webinar is being recorded and will be available for playback on our website and YouTube channel. The resources shared today will also be linked on our website. So I'd love to introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Brooke Gracey, Marketing Director, leading a global campaigns team at Cvent. Brooke is known for her extensive technology experience and is often sought as a subject matter expert, helping event professionals understand how to integrate technology into planning, execution, and event marketing. She has a passion for emerging technology and has led several innovative event marketing and activation projects, including virtual reality. When Brooke is not working, she is going on adventures with her partner, Tanya, and 3 wonderful fur babies. Now, let's get started. Brooke, you can take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear about my fur babies. I hope you guys were as well. Love to see the chat blowing up here. I just want to let you guys know if you see my eyes going down here, it's because I'm looking at the chat because we're hopefully going to be doing a lot of chatting today. But just to set the stage, the webinar today is behind the scenes, and it's all about how me and a colleague of mine, built a webinar using ChatGPT. And so I'm going to talk about all of the process of how we crafted that webinar from start to finish, but we're throwing AI into the mix because AI is all the rage right now, isn't it? It's really got us wondering, how can we use it to boost our processes? How can it make us quicker and sharper? But the real question is, how do we use it properly? And so these are the questions we're going to be hopefully answering today. And, AI can be a little controversial as well. So we truly do, I want this to be a discussion with you all, or a friendly debate, using the chat to do so. Also, if you have any questions that come up as I'm going through this content, please write it down, throw it in the Q&A. We'll definitely leave some time at the end to answer those. So to start out, I know you already heard my bio, so I won't go too deep into this, but my name is Brooke Gracey. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Cvent. I've always, since I was a child, I was always interested in emerging technologies. I would call myself an AI enthusiast now. My focus really is on how to use the technology while also not losing our unique voice. I'm very, very interested in maintaining that, crucial human touch in our marketing while also using technology at the same time. So striking that balance between the organic and the authentic, that really is my mission. And I'm excited today to discuss the potential of AI, and how I personally have been geeking out on AI and using it to build things like webinars. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to walk you through the 5 stages of building a webinar. And in each of those stages, I want to discuss some best practices, how to use AI to help ideate, how to use it to help build and promote your virtual events, even execute them, and using AI to help make sense of all of the insights that you're getting post-event. So with each of these stages, I'm going to encourage you to think about some of the tough topics that come up around AI, some of those pros and cons when using the technology. I learned a lot We did this webinar, a couple months back, and honestly, I learned a lot by leaning into AI technology to help us build and execute the webinar. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing all those insights with you. So again, get ready to engage. Use the chat as much as possible. I'm so glad to hear, John, in Baltimore, that it is cool. It is cool here too, in Eugene, Oregon, where I am at. We're all going to learn together today. The reality is that none of us are experts on AI yet. So we really need to share our best practices. And I'm hoping that you'll each walk away with some ways that you can use AI to help immediately create efficiencies within your webinar program. And so let's start with maybe something to get the conversation started in the chat, really starting from the beginning. And again, this is really where I start to get excited, is talking about AI and how it can help with, let's just say, picking a webinar topic or even a session topic. If you're thinking about what is the topic that I need to talk about to draw the most engagement and the biggest audience. And so all of that really comes part in the ideation phase. That's where all the brainstorming has happened. That is where your content development starts to take place. And in some cases, when you've come up with a topic for a webinar or a session, sometimes you need to get approvals on those topics as well. So this could be where those approvals are sought. So I like to think about the ideation phase as like the birthplace of the webinar. But here's a thought-provoking question that I want you to consider as we're jumping into this ideation phase. It's something we talk about a lot when it comes to AI or technology, and asking the question, can AI truly comprehend or mirror human creativity? Or is maybe this just a tool that's recycling pre-existing ideas? So something to think about as we're hopping into this topic, and we'll be talking a lot about this more as well. And so first thing first, when you are going to do a webinar, the first thing you're going to do is brainstorm. And I like to think of brainstorming as almost like a game of darts. You know, you're just kind of throwing ideas at the wall. You're not really sure which idea is going to stick. You're not sure which idea or dart's going to hit the bullseye, but you keep taking your shots, right? You just keep practicing, and you're going to get better over time. You're going to start to understand your audience, their likes and dislikes, and you're going to better hone in on a specific topic for a webinar. Now, imagine you're integrating AI into this process. I almost think about this like having now a dart throwing machine. So AI is increasing my chances of scoring, of hitting that bullseye. So whether it's me alone, just sitting at my desk trying to figure out what are the webinar topics we need to do, or it's me sitting in a room with my entire team or group, I can integrate this technology, AI, to help streamline our thoughts. It's going to help me to hit that target faster. And at the very least, it's going to start this flurry of ideas, and it's going to bring all of this inspiration to the brainstorming. It's just that dash of inspiration that helps you get to that delightful, quirky, and innovative idea much faster. Okay, so let's dig in a little more to brainstorming. So putting ourselves into a marketer or planner's shoes, they're looking for some cool, groundbreaking ideas. You know, you have to get butts and seats, right? You need to get people's attention. So you need to come up with some really cool ideas that's going to bring people to your webinar. So let's come up with some wacky idea, like if we're going to do a webinar on an 80s theme, or we wanted to like incorporate an interpretive dance. Like these are pretty out there ideas, but even if we were to put those into AI, it's going to help to visualize even seemingly offbeat ideas like that. And the best part with using AI is you can react to those suggestions instantly. So it really helps you to continue to refine your ideas and figure out where you're going to draw the line. It's really good at almost like nudging you out of your comfort zone. It's going to help you to be a little bit more daring when you're coming up with your ideas or your session titles or things like that. I always like to be a little bit fun and quirky in everything I do, but honestly, sometimes it's not like read the room, Brooke, right? Like sometimes it's not exactly the vibe we're going for. And so sometimes I even use AI to help me mix up my tone a little bit, even make something sound a little bit more serious, or if I wanted to make it even funnier, I can do that with AI as well. It's going to be my little buddy that rides along with me. So, how do we actually brainstorm with AI? So, now I'm going to go step by step and tell you actually how we did it. First, we just to give you insight, the topic of this webinar was innovative technology at events. So that was the topic that we eventually came to. So this is how we got there. First, we had to define the context. So I really needed to understand what exactly it is that we were brainstorming about and who the audience was going to be for this particular webinar. So I knew that we wanted to do a webinar for event organizers and event marketers, probably some of you that are in the audience right now. We wanted to talk to those who were planning events probably over the next couple months. And really the intent of this webinar was to spark some excitement, provide some insights that are timely and relevant for this audience. And so this was our context. So this is why we are brainstorming for a topic to begin with. We want to engage these event organizers and marketers, get them really excited about their events program that's coming up in the next couple of months, and talk to them about some of the innovative technologies. We'll get to that in a second. Now, when you're doing brainstorming, it's really important to recognize what AI can and cannot do. There are some limitations to AI. This is the thing. It does not comprehend these subtleties that we have as humans, our human thoughts or our human emotions. It doesn't intrinsically understand that, right? But we can guide it. So we go into our AI tool and we say, these are these event planners, these marketers, these people that we're trying to get in front of. We start to tell the tool a little bit more about these people. It's almost like we teach it our personas. And so I want the AI tool to understand that event planners and marketers right now, they are always trying to find ways to differentiate themselves from their competitors. They need to stand out from the crowd. They need to drive event attendance. They're spending a ton of money and time and resources putting on virtual or in-person events, and they have to get people to show up to get that ROI. They're very interested in creating purposeful experiences, and they want to lean into innovative ways of not only entertaining and engaging their audiences, but also through the use of storytelling. So I tell the AI tool, and Dan, I see in the chat here, the AI tool that I'm using at Cvent is called Azure. There are a ton of options out there. This is simply the ChatGPT tool. I'm giving it this information and I'm saying, hey, here's a little bit more about my planners and marketers. And now it's going to help me iterate so fast. It's going to drastically speed up the idea generation and the testing. So I asked the AI tool to come up with some unconventional ways that an event can engage event goers, and it just spit out like 100 ideas if I wanted it to, and it started all of these different thoughts, and then eventually we start to refine our ideas. So we say, okay, these are some good things. You know, we could talk about how to use food to make your events more engaging and get people to your events. We could talk about all kinds of different things, but eventually we refine, and we get to, okay, we're going to talk to them about innovative event technology. It's almost like you're talking to the AI tool, to ChatGPT, and help giving it information to help refine down to exactly what you're looking for. Now, the other thing too is when you're brainstorming, and I mentioned this earlier, there is some times where you have to go get stakeholder approval. So, you know, maybe it is your leaders or other team members. Everybody has to agree on what that wild webinar topic is going to be. And you can use AI to do this. It can be super handy. How do you do that? It really just kind of helps you fill in the blanks and even identify potential concerns that stakeholders have. It could be as simple as saying, hey, ChatGPT, I'm typing now. I'm saying, ChatGPT, I want to do this webinar. Here is the webinar title. This is the audience. What concerns might my VP of marketing have with the content? What concerns might my content director have? And you can come to those conversations more prepared. It can say, what would I say to my VP of marketing if they had concerns about XYZ on my webinar? And it can help to kind of give you that talk track. I know it may sound a little bit silly, but honestly, it really helps to get yourself out of your head and think about things, kind of like take a step back. It's almost like having an impartial third party come in and say, well, have you thought about this, and this? It's all about getting all of your thoughts and your goals down in a clear and cohesive way. Okay, so I end each section here with a little bit of a discussion. I'd love for you guys to continue this discussion in chat or let me know what your thoughts are. After each sort of part in the webinar planning process, I come with this sort of discussion question. Now, these are often hot topics that people are talking about with regards to AI. And this one is AI an asset or is it a liability when you're ideating and you're pre-planning an event? And there's arguments on both sides of the coin here. There's obviously a ton of ways that it can be an asset. It will create efficiencies, right? The best thing about AI is that it processes and it analyzes tons and tons of data very, very quickly, way faster than any human would be able to. So it creates a lot of efficiencies. It can come up with 50 webinar ideas in a matter of seconds. And then there's the automation too. It's could handle some of these more routine tasks that you have. But on the other hand, there is a lack of human touch when you are plugging some technology like AI into your processes, because it can analyze data, right? But it also lacks that human intuition, and it lacks the ability to understand any complex emotions. So all that to say, it really misses the nuances that comes with a human sitting down and writing down 50 ideas for a webinar. There also could become an over-reliance with the technology. It is very tempting to say, we can do all of this with AI, with ChatGPT. But again, it's neglecting that human creativity and intuition. And oftentimes those things are essential when it comes to event planning. For the webinar that we did a few months ago, my colleague Carissa and I spent a lot of time in ChatGPT to help write the outline for the webinar. The talk tracks, the identifying case studies that we talked about during the webinar, everything we got came from ChatGPT. I was literally asking the technology, will you write me a script for this section in the webinar? And honestly, it felt like magic. It would come up in seconds with a talk track that I could read verbatim on a webinar if I wanted to. But I started to have some feelings about it. I mean, honestly, could I go to a webinar where people have registered as an expert and read verbatim a script that I got out of ChatGPT? Was it truly my intellectual property? Curious to hear what you guys think. Please let me know your thoughts in the chat as I dig a little bit deeper into the next step of a webinar creation. And this is building the content for this webinar. And really, what you're going to do here is you're going to write your outline. So you've done your ideation phase. You've chosen what topic you're going to do. We're going to do this on innovative event technology. That's what we decided. But now we had to really dig layers deeper, right? Now I needed to build the outline and the talk track and everything else to get a webinar out the door. And so we leaned into AI to do this. First, we had our topic, we had innovative event technology, but now we really needed to dig into the subtopics, like what were we actually going to talk about? And we would use chat prompts to do that. So it could start with something as simple as, if I was doing a webinar in innovative event technology, what technology should I talk about? And it's going to give me a big, long list of all of these things. And then using my human creativity and thoughtfulness, I'm going to go in and pick the ones where I think my audience might really be interested and start building my subtopics off of that. And then I'm going to build out those subtopics. So let's use an example. Again, webinars about innovative event technology. So some of the things I'm going to talk about are holograms, how you can use holograms at events. How fun is that? I'm going to talk about some technologies for chat, just getting people to be able to interact through their, phone or other technologies as a supplement to them being in person there at an event. All kinds of things I can talk about, right? I'm going to start writing prompts in ChatGPT for each of those subtopics. So for example, what are some, describe how holograms are being used at events, and then it'll come back. It's like this inspiration, like, oh yeah, that is a really good idea. They have been using holograms at events for this. What else? I'm prompting again. What else have holograms been used at events for? Give me some examples of people who have used holograms at events, and it's going to spit me back even case studies that it's finding. And I'm going to do this for each of my subtopics. I'm just going to keep drilling down further and further using these prompts in AI to help me to build my outline. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to review it, I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to just keep continuing to build on the content. I would go so far as one of my prompts, and by prompts, I mean literally what I'm typing into ChatGPT. That is called my prompt. My prompt would be, write a 30-second talk track about the do's and the don'ts of using holograms at events. Or maybe my prompt is, identify a case study when holograms were used at events and write a talk track for a webinar. It really can be that simple. So how does it do it, right? It does. It sounds like magic. And for those of you, I would love to see in the chat, just sort of like a hand raise or a thumbs up for those that have used ChatGPT in the past. It does feel like magic, right? I would recommend for anybody who hasn't tried it yet, just go dip your toe in the water, right? Go just play around with it. I had a colleague who used ChatGPT to build a vacation plan for her, like going to which hotel. Like seriously, go in and play with it. It really feels like magic, and it's basically using mathematical models. So this is when we start to get into the geeky stuff, right? But it's using mathematical models that mimic human intelligence. It isn't, but it mimics it in a way where it's processing data. And essentially what it's doing is it's recognizing patterns, and then it's making very, very quick decisions. You guys have probably heard this term. It's using a natural language processing. And it analyzes text. So it's just looking through data, it's looking through text really, really, really fast, and it identifies key ideas and key themes. And that's how it can do things like write an outline in seconds. AI generated outlines for something like a webinar are going to be more accurate and more efficient than human generated ones. Hands down. It's going to be accurate, but it's going to miss subtle nuances. It's going to lack creativity. And so while AI can supplement that human creativity, it definitely can't replace it. Sorry, I saw something from John in the chat, writing country songs to thank guest speakers to our team meetings. I'm obsessed with that. It literally can do anything, right, John? But can you say this is John that wrote this country song for our guest speakers? You can't, right? There is that ethics surrounding AI content creation and ownership. It's very complex and it's very multifaceted because AI generated content, yep, you got to be honest, it's raised concerns about the impact on traditional content creation industries. You have journalists, you have songwriters, you have creative writers, and all of these people could be at potential of losing jobs if we can just put this content out there and say it's our own. There's also concerns about authorship and attribution. Because of this AI generated content, it really does blur the lines between human and machine authorship. So it makes it really hard to figure out who should be credited as the author of a particular work. I gotta ask you, John, did you let everybody know that AI wrote those songs? You gotta let us know in the chat. That is that blurry line. Of course, yay, right. We have to let everybody know it's that blurry line because it does raise those questions around ownership and intellectual property, especially where that AI generated content, if it's sold or it's distributed for profit. Obviously, there's a huge issue or ethics conversation happening around that. Okay, so does the convenience, because it's super convenient, but does the convenience of that AI generated content override potential ethical concerns? So do we kind of use it anyway? Do we just make sure we give it credit? It's definitely convenient, right? We know that. It's super efficient. It's super scalable. I actually have an example of this. We were building a nurture. Is a very complex email nurture we were building, and we needed something like 200, 300 emails. It was like a lot of emails that we needed because we had all kinds of segmentation in there. So we needed an email for this persona and that persona and this vertical, all kinds, so many emails, and we didn't have the bandwidth at that exact moment for somebody to go write 300 emails. So we said, why don't we let AI do that, right? How scalable is this? We can have AI write everything in, honestly, like a day. And it was great. We had all of these emails. We could take it to and build our nurture, and we could get it out the door. Now, of course, as marketers, the first thing we did after we launch a nurture is we're going to look at what those results are, right? That tells us if it's working or not. And we saw that the email rates were not exactly what we were hoping for. These emails weren't converting like we wanted. Remember, all of the emails were written by AI, and we said, you know what, let's go in and tweak some of them. Let's add that human element to these. We'll take mostly what AI wrote for us, but we're going to go in and just tweak a few things. And so we did. It took a lot less time than if we would have sat down and written 200 or 300 emails, but we did need that kind of human intervention, that human touch to make sure that our program was successful. And sure enough, those emails are converting at a much higher rate with just that kind of human touch to that AI generated content. Now, the ethical concerns we've talked a lot about, but one that I want to bring up too is, bias. Because if an AI model's training data, so like if the data it's getting is biased, the generated content that it is spitting out could perpetuate those biases as well. So this could lead to skewed or unfair representations. And I think this is a really important conversation us to be having when we're talking about this kind of technology. Thank you, John, for being a part of that conversation. There are these valid arguments, right? Just both for and against that AI is even sophisticated enough to do what we need it to do, especially in marketing, right? My focus is personalization, and engaging and targeting diverse audiences. I can't just talk to everybody the same. And while on one hand, these AI algorithms are processing a ton of data super quickly and super accurately, they could create personalized, culturally sensitive content. They could very quickly create content that resonates with diverse audiences, definitely. But on the other hand, I'm sorry, one more thing on that. Not only can it create content for diverse audiences, but how many of us have problems with converting our content into multiple languages as well? Coming from a global company, or constantly trying to translate and things like that, and AI could help with that too. So that could really help with accessibility and inclusivity. Okay, but then on the other hand, that some may argue that the AI generated content is going to lack creativity. It's going to lack authenticity. It's going to lack emotional connection. We know that. And it could actually alienate diverse audiences. Those AI algorithms, they're relying really heavily on user data, and it can sometimes lead us to narrow and even sometimes stereotypical assumptions about audience behavior. So a lot of conversation that can be had around that. And that topic is really important, especially when we're discussing the promotion of an event. Like the webinar we did a couple months ago, we used AI to help us build all of the promotional assets to get those registrations. And Shocker. We learned a lot of valuable lessons along the way. But first and foremost, I think the thing that really caught my attention, and I'm sure you guys are seeing this as well, but a lot of the tools that we use to plan and execute events, whether virtual or in person or hybrid, many of those tools already have AI built right in. I'm going to use an example, Cvent. There's a writing assistant built right into that. I also really love using other tools. I'm name dropping, but Canva. Love designing in Canva. Some really, really cool AI tools built in right there as well. The one in Cvent, for example, could help writing event emails, enhancing event descriptions. You could use it to write bios. That's exactly what we did. We actually took that AI writing assistant and helped level up the description for our webinar so that it was more enticing for our customers. So we gave it some content and we gave it our webinar topic. We changed the tone. We said we want this to be very enthusiastic. Both Chris and I are very enthusiastic. And we let it work its magic. And really for us, it was the perfect tool. Writing the webinar title, that abstract, even the script for a teaser video was done using AI. So it really, again, came down to writing the prompts. I used very open-ended questions, and I just continued to, I want to say refine my prompts, but really what I'm doing, I just continued to talk to ChatGPT until I got what I was looking for. One thing that is not my strong suit, maybe something I could use a little bit of work on, but I cannot sit down and just say, Brooke, write 10 really catchy webinar titles. Like, if you ask me to be creative on the spot like that and just write, like the brain falls out of my head, I completely forget everything. I just can't do it. But if you give me a list of webinar titles that I could react to, like I'm all over it. Give me that inspiration. And that's really what this AI tool can do, or ChatGPT did for me. The other part, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, is the personalization, right? That's so important to us as marketers when we're promoting anything, really. We want them to feel like we're talking right to them. Can't be the same email or digital ad to everybody. So what we did is we actually taught ChatGPT to understand our marketing personas. And here's a couple ways that you can do that yourself. And I can't emphasize this enough. It is a really, really cool way to almost mold the tool into exactly what you need it for and teach it about what your business is all about and who the personas are that you're trying to get to engage, whether it's buy your product, come to your event, whatever it is. So in order to teach ChatGPT about your marketing personas, the first thing you need is your marketing personas, right? You have to define them. So we really need detailed profiles of your target audience. Include everything from demographics to interests. Pain points is one of my favorites. What is the pain point I am trying to solve for this marketing, event marketing persona that I need to talk to? Behavior patterns. It's also sometimes great to have copy that has already been written for this persona so that you can feed it into ChatGPT. And that's the next step, is training the model. So in order to do this, you feed them the information. That's kind of the terminology that you'll hear. Basically mean you're giving it to ChatGPT. You could do it through a conversation. There are some tools that allow you to kind of just like upload data or use integrations in the back end to plug in your information. But essentially, you just start telling it about these personas. Tone that is representative of them, language, content that you've written for them before. What are those pain points? You can also use this to refine, continue to talk to it about who it is. Like, write me an email for XYZ persona. It comes back, you say, that's not quite right. Like, here are some of the things I would change, ChatGPT. It's like you're training it, you're feeding it the information that you need to make sure that it's going to give you the most helpful content back, the closest to perfect that you can get. And so that's really what you're doing when you're testing the model, and you're continuing to refine and improve. Okay, so discussion topic for you. Is AI marketing an evolution in precision, or is it a regression in personalization? I know we've talked about personalization quite a bit here. There is just so much opportunity to use AI for personalization, but I think that this conversation is a really important one to have, because there are both sides to this argument. You know, the first is it's an evolution in precision, right? We've talked about this a lot. What ChatGPT is doing is it's looking at data super, super fast, and it's making precise marketing decisions. It's really helping you to eliminate the guesswork and essentially get larger and enhance your return on investment. It's really good with segmentation and targeting because it can analyze and segment audiences with high precision. It can help ensure that the right message is getting to the right person at the right time. But if you look at it from the other side of the coin, the other side of this argument is that it could be a regression in personalization. First of all, there are privacy matters, something that comes up in conversation a lot, especially when you might be feeding the model with potentially, private data that shouldn't be shared. So definitely be thinking about the privacy and the data protection. But also it could have unintended bias as well. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but if the data it's looking at is biased, the content it's going to spit out is going to be biased as well. It lacks that human touch as well. We know that, even though it's like an analytical powerhouse and it's just going through data so fast, it doesn't understand complex humans. It just doesn't. So I think it's really important to be having these conversations as we're thinking about how we're going to plug this tool into what we do every day to help find those efficiencies that we need. Okay, so let's now delve into the heart of the execution and production phase. And our provocative question here is, does AI's impersonation of human interaction enhance or detract from the authenticity of the event? And this is actually my favorite section of this webinar, because we get to start talking about what does AI look like? Good question. We are going to go live with this webinar, right? Chris and I have spent all this time in AI figuring out what topic we're going to talk about, putting together our outline and our talk tracks. But now we're going to go present it to our audience. And frankly, we were like, ChatGPT did all the work here. Shouldn't they get credit for the work? We really felt like AI or ChatGPT should be one of the speakers in our webinar. I mean, after all, they did all the work, right, for us. So we had to then figure out how to do this. Some of you might be like, oh, that's a piece of cake. They're ready to go 24/7, right? They don't have any schedule conflicts. You don't have to do a rehearsal. It's just, a technology. You just got to plug it in, right? But it really wasn't that simple. We had to think about how AI would appear, what it would look like. We had to figure out how AI was going to not only interact with us as co-speakers, but also the audience. There was a lot to consider here. And we actually took inspiration from a live show that had an actual robot on stage. Our colleague was there. This is a picture that they took it was a FinTech conference. So it was on the future of tech it was a B2B marketing conference. And look at the robot. It's so cute, right? Just hanging out on the stage with all of the other speakers. It's adorable, but how did it get there? Does it need to be charged? Like, who takes it on and off the stage? Does it have somebody that's just like hanging out with it all the time? And also, where do you get a robot, right? There's all of these considerations. It is super cool to see it up on stage, but this added a whole new layer to planning, right? And our challenge was unique too, because we were working on a virtual event. We weren't in person. And AI can't just like dial into Zoom and join from a computer like a human would. So we had to get super collaborative with our webinar producer. And we had to figure out how to give life to our AI speaker, who we named Chatty, Chatty the chatbot. We couldn't have Chatty join the webinar from a screen, so we actually created this sort of dummy persona. I wanted to give it life almost. And so for Chatty, we wanted Chatty to be able to not only present content, but also respond during the webinar. And this was where we then came to the visual representation. Because what is Chatty going to look like? Carissa and I were very much rooting for a lively, animated, squishy, oh, I just want to be friends with it character, right? And on the other hand, our producer, Greg, who I love, but he had this more realistic. He's like, it needs to be a robot, right? Like more of this representation you see on the right. And I just thought it was interesting that we all sort of imagine AI differently. And I thought it was a really interesting exercise that we went through. But ultimately, we chose that super fun animated version. I can be very persuasive. We wanted Chatty to be approachable. We wanted it to be a little bit playful, you know, embodying the spirit of creativity and the fun that we wanted in our session. But we also wanted it to be presenting content that was impactful and interesting to our audience. We wanted it to really be more like this one on the left. Hi, Chatty. Now, the next thing is how do you give it voice? What does Chatty sound like? And how do you let Chatty talk? Ultimately, I mean, there were some bumps along the way, not gonna lie. Ultimately, what we learned is that nobody wants to hear a robot voice for 30 minutes during a webinar. Because what we ended up doing is we pre-recorded everything that Chatty was going to say. And when I say we, I mean me. I pre-recorded it in an app on my phone and turned it into a robot voice like this. Yeah, it was fun. It was a cool concept, right? We wanted to bring it to life, but it turns out no one wants to listen to a robot voice for 30 minutes. So I'm so sorry if one of you was in the crowd for that. But it was a really, really good learning experience. It was a bit of a miss, but that's what this is all about, right? We have to experiment, and you can learn from my mistakes. We do think we put on a memorable show, though. I think it was very interesting to see AI represented and given sort of this credit where credit may or may not be due. It was kind of like having your awkward friends come join you on a webinar. But I do have a lot of love for Chatty. Okay, so the discussion topic here is all about the extent to which we should be humanizing AI. I see John's comment in the chat. This is kind of along those lines. Like, the credit where credit is due, the humanizing, like in Word, do we give it credit for editing? No, but does anybody remember the paperclip guy? That was kind of a humanization of some of their technology back in the day. Okay, so the do's and don'ts, or the for and against on this topic about humanizing AI. The for humanizing, kind of like what Carissa and I did in the webinar, is it created better engagement. Human-like AI interfaces, like our friend Chatty, it can provide a much more engaging, a much more relatable experience. Just want to testing, make sure everybody can hear. It really helps people feel more comfortable. People feel a little less intimidated working with or interacting with a technology if it seems approachable and cute. It can help improve that communication too. The things that you need to think about, though, first of all, the creep factor, just in general. I think there's a really thin line between a human-like AI and one that's too human. There's been a movie recently about a doll that looks very, very human, but is not. That can get a little creepy. It can lead to some discomfort. It can cause a little distrust. So you just need to be aware of that. but also just the unrealistic expectations as well. If you have too much humanization, it could lead to unrealistic expectations of the AI's capabilities. Because AI, no matter how advanced this is, and more every day, it still does not process human consciousness or intuition. All right, next up. Now, the debate over whether AI's analytical precision outweighs its ability to understand those nuanced human responses in a post-event analysis has valued arguments as well. You have done a webinar or an event and you have all of this data. You have a massive amount of data that you need to sort through and come up with some key findings, right? AI can do that. It can process a ton of data super quickly and accurately, and it can help lead to those data-driven insights. However, using AI could oversimplify or inaccurately analyze human responses. Remember, it doesn't understand the nuance there. So that could result in recommendations that may not fully align with the human needs. So what do you guys think? If you want to throw in your chat, please share your thoughts on how AI helps us with analytical precision, or does it kind of miss the mark? Because when it comes to data and analytics, there are several ways that you can use AI to help provide insights at events, such as a webinar. First, you have AI algorithms or the AI algorithms in general. They can analyze the chat logs, the Q&A sessions. It can do that sometimes in real time if you have the right tech. This is going to give you more comprehensive and detailed understanding of all of the feedback and engagement that you're getting at the event. There are even tools that can analyze the audio and video content of a webinar. It could provide a, what's the word I'm trying to think of, but almost like a report out after a meeting saying here were the key topics that you talked about. Tools right now like Zoom and other tools have that already plugged in where you can kind of flip a switch and the AI turns on. Some of those tools even help to identify areas where the speaker was particularly engaging, or maybe where the audience may have lost a little bit of interest. Like, Brooke, you're talking way too fast in that section. Nobody can understand, can give that kind of interesting feedback. And then thirdly, AI could help to analyze the demographics and the behavior of the audience. So where are they? What are their interests? Who is this person or these people that are coming to your events, and help you learn a little bit more about them. And this brings us to our last hot topic. And then we're going to get to questions. So please let me know, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A. We will have a few minutes for questions. But first, let's talk about our last discussion, which is AI capable of providing genuine human understanding? I feel like I've hit home on this a few times. It's super important to me that we have that discussion, right? There are definitely pros and cons against this. It isn't a human. It's not going to understand the human nuances, but it could help you to understand humans through the use of data analysis, because that's what it does best. All right, so we don't know what is up for the future of technology. We had a great time doing this webinar with AI. One of the questions I get a lot is, would I do it again? Would I build another webinar from start to finish using AI? Maybe, but I think I would add a lot more human intervention next time. I would probably refine my prompts a little bit more, and I 100% would not use a robot voice when Chatty comes to speak. All right, so what are your questions?
We had a question from Dan. Is there a risk that we could erode and lose skills such as writing, creativity, etc.?
I mean, definitely. I mean, sorry, I'm obviously passionate about that, but I think that there is definitely a risk there. I mean, I've kind of already saw myself doing it where I'm like, oh, I don't have to do X, Y, Z. I can just go to, ChatGPT and it can help me. So yeah, I definitely think there's a risk there for sure.
Okay, we have another question. Um, where is the sweet spot between AI and human intervention when it comes to content writing?
You know, the content writing is such a hot topic for me, especially after, the example I gave you guys around the nurture and like writing all those emails and writing all those content and stuff like that. Again, I would just say like the sweet spot is not you enter one prompt into an AI tool or ChatGPT and you get out something, you copy and you paste it and you take it to your audience. There has to be a layer of human intervention. You got to put your like human touch on it. But it can drastically reduce the amount of time to get you from start to finish on any kind of content that you're talking about. So there is a sweet spot there. I think you just kind of have to play around with it a little bit, but again, just never do the copy and paste.
Sure, I think we have one more, and then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat or Q&A now. Um, but there seems to be a lot of debate around using AI versus not. How do I know when to use it and when not to?
Yeah, when to use AI and when not to. The approach that I've been taking these days, and I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of conversation at work about incorporating AI and how we can find efficiencies by using this technology and which AI technologies do we need? What can we do with what we have? Anyway, lots of conversations. I'm sure you guys are feeling the same way in some areas. Um, I tend to approach it with any problem I have, I at least consider that if I at least ask the question, could I solve this with AI in some way? I had an example. The producer Greg, who worked with us on this webinar, he produces a ton of webinars at Cvent, and he has this problem that he was trying to solve the other day. Because for every webinar he does, he likes to do a teaser video. This often requires a speaker, whoever is speaking on the webinar, to record a little video, and then he needs to edit it, and then he needs to get it out and promote it through the channels. But he's having a really hard time getting speakers to record their teaser videos, get them in on time, all that kind of stuff. And so that's a good example. There's this problem to solve, and I just said, could we do that with an AI? There are some really cool tools out there, even like in Canva, for example, some plugins where you can put in a script and it will, be an AI generated person can read your script for you. Is there maybe or you could have a character, it doesn't even have to be a person, or, there's some really good tools to create efficiencies in this area out there. And so I just posed the question to him, could AI do this? So not to turn that question into the longest answer ever, but really every question that comes across my desk, I just at least engage with the idea of, could AI help? Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't.
Okay, thank you. We have two more, and then I think we'll be able to wrap it up. But I have a question from Jeff on, there are many blueprints on how to create a compelling webinar that drives the desired actions of target audiences. Does this feedback in AI weave in or otherwise reflect these proven practices?
You know, you can ask it to, because it has that data, right? Or if it doesn't have the data or blueprints that maybe you want it to, you can always feed it that information so that it knows it. But I would say in general, yes, probably, because it's going to have all the information available to it to understand what a compelling webinar should and could look like, because it's looking through all that data that it has. So when it gives that kind of feedback, you could ask it to weave in those blueprints that you're talking about. So kind of a tough answer, but overall, yes, I believe it would, especially if you asked it to.
Okay, thank you. The last question we have is, did you think about diversity inclusion issues? Like, do you default the AI character being white?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, John. Like I I think we all need to layer that on top of this for sure. You know, I know we've talked a lot in this webinar, maybe not a lot, but we've talked a couple different times about the biases that AI could potentially create, how it could be a very great tool for diversity and inclusion, but it could also have some concerns as well. Um, I regret now not putting more thought into that when building the character, but I think it's a really good conversation today to have, John. And I think as we move forward and as we try to humanize this technology, we need to take that into consideration. So it's something that can be relatable for everyone. Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Brooke, for leading this. It was a fantastic presentation, and I think you brought up a lot of really important discussion points for everyone attending and who will be rewatching the playback. I just wanted to say thank you for leading it, and that this webinar and all of the resources available will be made public on our website and YouTube channel by the end of the week, but probably tomorrow as well. But thank you again so much. And thank you all for attending. I really appreciate all of you involved. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.